Welcome to the Travel Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Vandenberg. On our show, I interview and connect with leaders across travel, hospitality, and tourism. We talk leadership in our industry, what has shaped them, the successes, failures, and everything in between. Today, I'm speaking with Nicole Mahoney, CEO of Break the Ice Media and Travel Alliance Partners. Before we start, I want to let you know about the Travel Leader community. Every month, I'll be gathering a group of travel leaders to continue the conversation about leadership. This is a group for travel leaders looking to share, reflect, and grow their leadership competencies with the support of me as a trained coach. Learn more at www.thetravelleadercoach.com. Welcome, Nicole. So
Thank
great
you,
to have
Rachel.
you.
I'm so excited to be here. And I had you on my podcast a few years ago, I think, before you launched this one. And so it's so exciting to be on the other side of the mic.
I know. Actually, that was really funny that is how I think that's how we first met, and then we've had some other connections since then through you speaking at my Women in Leadership event and also Travel Unity. And it was actually being on your podcast at the time, I was doing some podcast appearances and I thought, oh, I would never want to do this myself. And then somehow just doing it and getting that experience, I caught the bug. And you were so helpful on my journey to getting there and actually had a great conversation with you when I was getting ready to do that. So thanks for your support. I'm glad to finally have you on.
Yes, I'm excited to be here. And I love supporting others on their journey, no matter what it is they're working on. So happy that I was able to provide a little bit of input for you.
Great. So, to get us started today, what has been the red thread throughout your travel career?
Yeah, I love this question because it made me stop and think for just a minute. And then it was kind of like one of those aha moments, which it's collaboration, which might really sound kind of redundant, but I just, published a book all about collaboration in the travel, tourism, and hospitality industry. And through writing that book, I actually went way back in my career to when I first started working in my family owned business and was thinking about the things that we were doing then. It wasn't in travel or tourism. It was a retail electronics store, but things that I learned from my father that kind of started me on this journey of collaboration. Some of the promotions that we ran where we collaborated with other businesses in the neighborhood. We had a mailing list back then. You sent real mail, not email. And we would send coupons out for neighboring businesses to our customers. And so we would cross promote each other and collaborate in that way. And we used to host these big events in our shopping plaza parking lot. Again, another collaboration. And so I actually reflect on that in the book a little bit in terms of those early seeds that you don't even realize are seeds until you get to a point and somebody asks you, what's the red through line? And it really is collaboration. So from working in the family business, I went on to work for the only job I had outside of my family business or working for myself was working for a company who had been hired to oversee the construction and operation of a brand new AAA baseball stadium in downtown Rochester, New York, which is where I'm from. And it was through that project that collaboration really came to life for me because we were collaborating with so many different entities. The city of Rochester was interested in bringing more people into their city center. They saw having a new AAA baseball stadium as a way to do that. The tourism office was interested in the project, of course, because they saw the opportunity not only to bring visitors for the baseball games, but also to bring in other sporting events that would draw in more folks. And, I was working with economic development people within the county and within the city, as well as the tenants of the stadium. And so it was just really that project that gave me the experience and kind of shined the light on really what collaboration can do.
Well, yeah, I mean it's no that's funny how sometimes things that are right in our face and obvious, like oh yeah, this is why this is important. And you just wrote a book about it, so clearly really important to you throughout your career. Uh, what is it that you think specifically gives collaboration so much meaning for you?
Well, um, one of the things, and one of the reasons why I launched my podcast, is because I was seeing at the point that I launched my podcast, I had what now, my agency, Break the Ice Media. And through the work we were doing in the travel, tourism, and hospitality space, I was part of and witnessing really awesome collaborations. And I was also seeing, though, where some collaborations were really struggling. And I would think to myself, geez, it could just be so much better if, if what? Like what is the piece that needs to change in order for it to really, for a collaboration really to be successful? And so watching that and kind of understanding how collaboration can help especially small businesses and smaller destinations, I think, be more competitive. I grew up in a small family owned business, so I have like this place in my heart for small business. But then also living in the community where I live in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region, we're also a small community. And so I just really do believe that collaboration and working together is what's going to make everyone successful. And so just kind of, recognizing it. And when I launched my podcast, one of my thoughts was we don't talk about collaboration enough. People kind of take it for granted, like that it just happens. And I believe it doesn't just happen. There's like certain elements that make it stronger or better than others. And so that's really why I started to, explore it more and try to understand it more and also try to share with others what they can do within their own collaborations to make them stronger and to make them better and more successful.
So it's not just about the end result of being successful, but also being intentional about how you're doing together to get
Yes,
those
exactly.
results.
Exactly. hmm
So, you have you wear a lot of hats. You're a podcast host. You have just written a book. You have a marketing agency which focuses on tourism and hospitality. And you've also recently acquired a new company. Is there something, all of those projects and business initiatives that you have under your umbrella, what is that overall impact that you are striving to achieve in this industry?
Yeah, that's an interesting question as well. And we've actually been exploring this internally with the team because to your point, we did acquire Travel Alliance Partners. We're just finishing up our second full year of owning that. Prior to acquiring it, though, we had operated it. We were the association management company, if you will. Break the Ice had been hired to run the organization. So we've been involved in Travel Alliance Partners for about 5 years, maybe going on 6 years now. And we've been thinking about what is the through line between our brands, between Break the Ice Media, Travel Alliance Partners, and Destination on the Left, which is the podcast. And part of it is collaboration, of course. One of the things that drew us to Travel Alliance Partners in the first place is that it was built on a collaboration of tour operators who started it as a way to buy and sell travel product from each other. And also then they expanded it to include suppliers, that sell them the product that they're packaging in their travel products. So it is just one big collaborative organization, which we just love. So collaboration is part of it. But since I launched Break the Ice, and even in the earliest days when we were only, 2 or 3 employees, and we would talk about the true purpose of the work that we were doing. And while travel and tourism is really fun industry to be in, and going to the trade shows can be really fun, and going on a media fam is a lot of fun, and all of that. At the end of the day, what we're really doing is helping to make an impact on the economy, right? Helping these small communities, small destinations, small businesses, museums, whatever it is that's in that whole ecosystem, helping them to make a difference within their communities and truly help their communities grow and thrive. And we believe that. Every member on my team believes that wholeheartedly, that they are really working to help improve, lives and economic vitality of communities.
Wow, that's huge to that kind of vision, perspective, that that bigger purpose for your company. How do you how do you kind of keep that at the forefront with your team members?
It's actually written right into our mission and our vision for the company. We use our mission and vision internally at company meetings. In terms of just, process, we meet quarterly as a team and review those. But we also have it in all of our proposals, and it's in a lot of the materials that we put forward. So it's a constant reminder to us. Um, and we've been doing it for so long, and it's become so meaningful. And I got to say, the podcast also, just talking to people on the podcast and hearing their stories and hearing the stories of their, communities and the things that have made a difference for them and their organizations. Um, my team listens to those, right? I listen to those. We retell those stories. A lot of those stories are retold in my book. And just hearing those stories and being a part of it adds so much more meaning to the work that we do. It's not just a
Yeah.
PR pitch. It's not just a digital campaign. It's not just a strategic marketing plan. It's more than that. And that's what's actually enabled us really to have such a strong culture and be able to attract really amazing team members as well. So, um, yeah, I think it's just ingrained into just about everything that we do, and we're trying to actually talk about it more. To be honest, sometimes it gets so ingrained it becomes like something that internally, and you forget to verbalize it and talk about it more. And so we've been very conscious about trying to talk that language more frequently.
It seems like also, I mean, what you said about doing the podcast interviews, that connection to also your stakeholders and your target audiences is really keeping you grounded in that purpose and makes it
Mhm.
real on a
Mhm.
day-to-day basis. It's not just some conceptual thing out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, you could probably relate to this, Rachel, with the organization that you have. I mean, it's kind of a little bit of a peer-to-peer network, if you will, because even though the podcast sometimes, your podcast host can feel, you're putting your message out into the world, but you're having these conversations with people and you're hearing similar stories or similar threads, or all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I'm not really alone in this. Like, look at
Right.
look at what's really happening out there, and the people who are making a difference and making an impact. And on my show, we don't only, we talk about creativity and we talk about collaboration, but we also talk about adversity and overcoming challenges, and to hear the stories of the different types of challenges that folks in our industry in all different parts. It's not just destinations or attractions or accommodations. It's the mix of all of it. And so hearing the stories from all of the different sides, yeah, does keep you really connected and grounded for sure.
Close to That's really
Mhm.
you talk a lot about your team, and I actually, the first time that I came in touch with you was by listening to the podcast during COVID, or just post COVID, and that was when I really started listening to a lot of podcasts. And one of the first episodes I listened to was, I think, one where you actually talked about culture and your values, and yeah, just that process that you have with your team. Could you identify how would someone actually describe you as a leader someone who works closely with you?
Hmm. Isn't that always a fun question? What would
Yeah.
they say?
Right.
um, I think one of the things that people would say about me is that I am definitely invested in my team. I invest in them, I support them. There have been times when um, we've even had, there was a time that stands out for me when we had a client come to us, client prospect, and I was starting to have conversations with them, and one of my team members said to me, "Oh, I'm not sure about this client. I don't think that they really align with our values, and here's why." And there was conversation about that, and we ultimately said, "Okay, I'm going to trust your judgment. If you don't think they align with our values, then this isn't really one that we want to pursue." And we didn't pursue the prospect. And so I think when things like that happen, when something happens and you kind of stand for your employee, or back them up, make them a player at the table, if you will, in terms of their input, not just listening, but also taking it into account. It just does something to like strengthen the team, to strengthen their ability to like to trust themselves, um, to be able to make decisions, to be able to work, kind of independently, if you will, and not always needing to check with the boss to see if this is okay. And as we're trying to grow our business, that's so important because I can't be at every client meeting anymore. I can't be answering, every single employee's question about whatever it might be, that they're working towards. And so having that trust, building up their confidence, and having their back, I think is so important. So I think they would definitely say that I have their back and that I invest in them. The other way I invest in them is just through professional development opportunities and all kinds. It's not just it's not just the tactical skill set. Yes, we go to, the PRSA conferences and the different travel conferences, but I'm also sending them to, emotional intelligence workshops. And right now, two of my team members are in a 8-week kind of cohort that's working on emotional intelligence, and they're loving it. So it's helping them more with, their personal side of their lives. And so we really do support kind of the whole team member in that way. So I think that's one of the things that they would say. Yeah.
I think it just comes back to I mean, even if that's not, I mean, that maybe not be your central purpose is that it directly benefits the company. You hope that, of course,
Mhm.
but it definitely comes back tenfold with that kind of investment in your people, for sure.
Mhm.
So switching gears a little bit, what to get a bit more personal, what makes your life and work meaningful?
Mhm. Mm, well, let's see. I mean, I get so much meaning out of my life, and I'm a mom of four, first of all. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a daughter. Like there's all of those things which make
Yeah.
my life so meaningful. But I would say the biggest difference is I love my job. Like I love what I do, and I don't think of my work. I mean, it is work, but I don't think of it like that. It's part of my life. Like sometimes when I think about not doing my work, I think because I'm, starting to think, well, on the horizon there may be a retirement at some point.
Right.
And then I think, well, what would I do? But and when I think about all of the times in my life where I've really felt, good inside about what I'm doing, I've been in some way inspiring or helping or mentoring someone else. So whether it's, my children as I was raising them, or it's a team member who works for me, or through the podcast, and through the work that I do out in the travel and tourism and hospitality community, it's the people that I meet and have conversations with. Um, or it's the peers in my, business owner networks that I belong to. Um, I get the most kind of, feeling of really being accomplished and fulfilled when I feel like I can help others. Um, and just mentor and coach and help them be better.
Yeah, definitely. In my connections with you, always seem to be someone who's very good at making that connection with
Mm.
people on a human level. That definitely has come across in my conversations with you. So
Yeah, thank
love
you.
to hear that. When have you underestimated yourself?
Mm. I saw this question because you sent these to me earlier, earlier than hitting record here.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh gosh, at first I was like, I feel like a lot of times. But I thought I would pick the one I would pick was around my book just because it's so new, because I did just launch this book, Stronger Together, and it launched in September. But writing the book, first of all, I always thought I wanted to write a book, but never knew what it would be about. Then through the pandemic was working on a couple of things. One did some more research on collaboration specifically, so I had some good, solid, research backed information about collaboration that I was blogging about and had white papers and things. Um, and then also during the pandemic, I had signed up for a course to create a keynote speech. And it was through that process of doing the keynote, working on a keynote, that I realized I had an idea for a book that would be about collaboration, that would use the stories that I have from my podcast, because I've talked to, over 350 people about
Wow.
collaboration and got so many stories. And then I would use the research also as a basis for the book. So it's a daunting task, like to think, oh, I'm going to write a book. And then you're putting your ideas out there. And so many times you think it's kind of like that imposter syndrome where you think like, nobody's going to care about my ideas. Do I really know what I'm talking about? All of those questions that come to your mind. And honestly, even as we got close to September when I knew my book was going to launch this year, I like had this weird, like nervous feeling in my stomach because I was just like, I don't know if if this is going to be successful. I don't think people are going to really care about it, like all of the things. And the underestimation is that, yes, people do care about it. The launch has gone wonderfully, as good as I could, have asked for. The feedback and the reviews on Amazon, and just people who have been emailing me and congratulating me and telling me that they got the book. A friend of mine who I've known since I was 10 years old bought the book. She's a teacher, a high school teacher, English teacher. And she sent me a text, the most beautiful text. And she said, first of all, I'm so proud of you, but also this is an amazing book. And there are things in here that I hadn't thought about. And I've been struggling with this project that we're doing at school. And now I kind of have some ideas on how I can move it forward, you know, and that's just amazing. So that's the underestimation. Like you just really don't know um, what kind of impact you can have unless you actually put yourself out there and do it. So,
You push through it. You push through it. You've gotten to this point. How did you get past some of that self-doubt and
mm.
uncertainty?
um, well, I've got lots of peer networks, so I talk to my friends and I share. You got to share. Like if I didn't share that I was feeling this way, I don't know if I would have gotten past it, right? Because people encouraged me and kind of, no,
Yeah.
and reminded me, no, you are the expert. You have the research. You have the conversations from the podcast. You have the experience. You know, so that was part of it, right? Getting the encouragement from my inner circles. And then the other part is just really, I always, and this is what I do with everything in my life, just take one step, just figure out what is the next thing to move myself closer to actually, doing what I needed to do. So, like around the launch, what is the next thing I need to do? Okay, how am I launching it? is there a lot, is there an in-person event? Is it a virtual event? Is it a series of events? Like, let's just like do one thing to get us a little bit closer. And that's just what I had to keep doing until um we finally started, I started to get the proof points. Once you look for the proof points, you start to get them, right? Like the text from my friend and conversations with people and things like that.
So those are two really key takeaways for me is, just putting one foot in front of the other,
Hmm.
identifying what the next step is and just going through the process, but also taking time to reflect on that feedback and those wins that you have around a project like this. So those are some great tips for our listeners. So I mean, obviously you've just been through a big event, this book launch, but are there other, is there another event that has been really significant in terms of how it's shaped you as a leader in your career?
Yeah, and I'm just looking at my notes because I thought about this one in advance too. Um, and I actually, what I wrote in my notes was it's all incremental growth. So, in terms of where I've been and where I'm going, it's all incremental, which is so interesting because there isn't generally like one big thing happens and then all of a sudden, the world opens up and my
Right.
business is where it's supposed to be or what have you. It's all kind of a journey. Um, I can point to a couple of things as it relates to my business and growing my business. One of the things that really made a difference for me when we were a two-person shop and I was trying to figure out how do I get more sales? Because I was doing I was doing a lot of the work myself and then I had somebody who was helping me and I couldn't figure out how to get over the hump. And I found a community. For me, it was Agency Management Institute, which is a national community of small to medium-sized agencies. And when I found the community, that's when I started to gain some momentum. So I guess that would be an event, but it wasn't like I found the community and boom, like something big happened. But I found the community and then I started to learn from the community and I started to apply what I was learning and it was incremental growth along the way. Um, and even thinking about culture, like you asked me about our values, I was thinking about that too. Um, we created the values that we have, I think maybe 6 years ago now. And we had maybe 6 employees at the time. Now we've got 12. Um, but until we had 6 employees, it was kind of hard to figure out what is our culture because when you're only one or two employees, like what is the culture? It's me and somebody who's
Right.
helping me. It's my personal values. And a lot of my personal
Right.
values come out in the business, of course, but so there's different like stages, right? Where you get to a
Yeah.
stage and you're like, oh, now we have a really clear vision. Now we have
Yeah.
values. Now we're building a culture.
Yeah.
So that's why when I think about it, it's just incremental and just always, learning and applying what we learn or applying what I learn
Yeah.
uh, to be
The
better.
Yeah, those are really critical points. I mean, yeah, I think we often, you know, if we see something about an article about a company or something on social media about their success, it seems like overnight success, right?
Mhm,
And it never is. It's really an evolutionary process
mhm,
that one thing leads to another. And when you build on those cumulative steps, that's where what re what gets you those big results in the long term.
mhm,
That's a really very important point. And I think being recognizing and being aware of that what you create as a startup of something today is just be prepared. It's going to be really different down the road because of that evolution as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm talking about scaling a business and people, but it doesn't have to even be people, right? You could still be a solopreneur, but whatever you start now in 10 years is going to look a lot different because you're always evolving. So
Right.
yeah, I can't agree more. It's everything. At one point I said to my employees, just so you know, we never arrive. Like it's not like we're just trying to get here. Like we're not just trying to get from
Right.
point A to point B when it comes to business. We're always evolving and we're continually on this journey. We're never going to get to some point on this journey and say, okay, we're all done.
Yeah.
We've arrived, this is it, because there'll be something new coming. And
Right.
that we'll have to, evolve and change for. Like right now, it's AI. What are we doing with AI? Right? That's the big question right now. So
Yeah.
there's always going to be something new that's going to make you, pivot and change.
Right. Yeah, I mean that and that's a perfect bridge to my next question is in that with that recognition that there's always things that are changing and right now we're going through a really big one with AI. But also, as your business has evolved over time, what do you think are the most important leadership competencies that are needed for that?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, well, first of all, I think being open to innovation is an important one because I think there are people who are just head down doing their work and kind of with blinders on. And
Yeah.
if you stay that way, the world's going to move way too fast around you. So you're going to lose, you're going to lose market share. You're going to lose out. You're not going to be as efficient there, so you have to be kind of open and looking for it. But the other thing I thought about when I was looking at this question before this interview is where I am in my career, one of the most important skills for me, and I think, and even for others, is the idea of coaching, not just delegating, but coaching. Because, like when I think about AI for an example, because we are trying to figure out, we use AI in our agency, but we haven't come up with exactly like a system or a process or a use case for it. We've got a few use cases we're playing around with, we're innovating, so we're figuring it out. But when I think about it, I'm like, but I'm not the one really that should be figuring it out. It should be the next like generation that's coming up behind me that's on my team, right? So how do I coach and mentor them to be open to the innovation, to to be able to not be afraid to fail, right? To try things, to try new things, and to figure it out. Because I think that's the most important thing. Because at some point, uh, all of us are going to be at a point where it's like, that's not exactly for me to figure out right now, right? I have a different role right now. And so figuring out how to coach others, I think is critical, really. And honestly, it's like for the whole travel, tourism, hospitality industry when we're thinking about, workforce challenges and who's coming up behind us and what are these jobs going to look like moving forward. And so we really need to be figuring out how to coach and inspire the younger generation to come up behind us and to keep it going.
Well, naturally, as a leadership coach myself, I love that you bring up coaching. And that's actually how I came upon coaching in the first place was I started reading about it and to use for myself as a general manager of my hotel with my employees. And then in conjunction with developing Accelerate Women Leaders in Travel, like it all came together. Like this is my passion. So could you more specifically describe what that actually means in the workplace to coach your
Coaching.
employees? Like how are you using that?
Yeah. For me, I guess in the most simplest form, it's asking more questions than providing solutions.
Yeah.
Um, it's empowering your team to, to see something and to be able to explore it and not have to worry about, making a mistake or trying something that fails and then getting in trouble for it or something. It could be a willingness to have some budgetary money. Like if we go back to the AI example, maybe there's like some software we want to play around with or something, right? It doesn't have to be a huge
Right.
budget, but having some willingness to invest in innovation that way.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's going on right now in my company is not only am I coaching the next layer of leadership that should be that's coming up behind me, but coaching them to coach the folks that work for them, right? Like under them, so that we're
Yeah.
kind, so you're teaching them how to be good managers and good coaches to their employees.
Right.
And it's not easy. And that's why we need leadership coaches like you, because it really is not an easy task, but having an awareness, I think, is a very important thing, right? To be aware, okay, this is a coaching moment. Um, we actually in our company, we were having a time crunch with some of our employees who felt like they just had too much on their list of things to do, and some of them were like holding on to the tasks because they felt if they delegated the tasks, it would take them more time to teach somebody how to do it than if they just did it themselves, right? I mean, that's the old adage, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we actually turned that around and we said, you're not delegating, you're coaching. And as soon as we framed it that you're coaching someone else on these tasks, they were all in because they're like, oh, right, if I coach them, then I can give them these tasks more freely. It's just like a different way to think about it. I'm not just delegating, I'm coaching somebody else to be able to accomplish this. And that was a very real example from our company that we used.
And I can see how, that mindset shift might help them see that by doing that, it may take more time in the beginning, but in the long term, because you're coaching them, it's like that, analogy, teach someone how to fish. Don't just give them the fish, teach them how to fish.
Mm-hmm.
That then they'll see actually that in the longer term, it will save them time because now the person that works for them is going to be able to do it on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that application of it. And I think, I mean, speaking also of why coaching is so important with the AI, I think I read a statistic, and I don't remember what the exact percentage was, but it was a mind-blowing statistics of the amount of skills that we currently use that are going to be obsolete like within the next 5 years, that we will have had to reskill, like something like 75% of our current skills have to be transformed for the new AI world. And that
Mm-hmm.
just speaks even more to the importance of coaching, because it's about being curious, asking questions, because the things that are going to be happening then, we don't know the answers to them now. It's going to be completely different. So you have to come at it from a complete like curiosity and learning standpoint, which is a really strong, yeah, a strong, reason why coaching is important
Yeah,
for
that's such a
sure.
great example. And I know part of me wants to say scary, right? But then also not
Yeah.
not necessarily scary, kind of exciting too, right?
Right, right.
So
Well, I
right.
can tell you I'm scared because I'm like, wow, at this age, like everything I'm doing right now is kind of irrelevant. Like I need to restart over. I mean, that's being a little bit facetious. I'm sure it's going to take a
Yeah.
little longer for my current skills to be obsolete, but it's mind-blowing for sure.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, so, going back to some of your own leadership competencies, what do you think is the leadership competency that really gives you an edge?
I think it's big picture thinking. I just my team sometimes I love this because I literally will wake up in the morning with sometimes three or four crazy ideas. I don't think they're crazy, good ideas, big ideas, different ideas. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, just a different angle to something will come to me. And what's awesome is I have a really awesome team. And when they are good ideas, I have an excellent team that can execute on them, which I love. But there's something about being able to see not just the big picture, but also what I would call like um, the cracks, like to see through the cracks of something, right? Because you might be looking at anything, a problem, a situation, a new product you're trying to roll out, and you're just seeing, say, that product, but hidden behind it or around the corner or through the cracks, there could be like some new angle or something,
Right.
that just gives you a different, idea or a different way to approach it. Um,
For
and
sure.
I forgot to say this earlier when you said, what would people say about you? One of the things that came to mind, and it relates to this part, is with Travel Alliance Partners when we were going through the pandemic with that organization. And these are tour operators. So all of us in the industry were hurt during the pandemic, but tour operators even more so and for
Mm,
a longer period of time. They had
absolutely.
millions and millions of dollars of business just disappear overnight, especially if they were international tour operators because there's no crossing borders.
Right.
And they were struggling and they were trying to figure out like how to keep Travel Alliance Partners alive, also how to keep their businesses alive. And during that time, I would wake up in the morning and I would literally think of an idea that we could do to either help them or, a way to keep their customers engaged or a way to engage with the industry or whatever it was. And I'd bring it to these meetings. And some of the tour operator partners would say, if there's a problem to be solved, give it to Nicole. She'll
Ah,
figure it out.
that's awesome.
She'll have some big idea. But
Yeah.
yeah, the best way I can explain it is being able to see through the cracks, trying to look
Yeah.
at something in a different angle. Um, but yeah, that kind of big picture thinking and always trying to think of, how
Yeah.
could this be better? How could we, make this goal work? How, whatever it is.
Yeah. How do you, I mean, I love that one because it's really looking beyond the obvious, right?
Hmm.
And that idea that you just said about looking at it from a different angle or perspective, that's something that I think it comes from experience. But how could someone develop that skill,
Mm,
you think?
yeah. It kind of goes back to what you're saying before about being curious and asking questions.
Right.
Um, Sometimes, we're trying to solve a problem and then all of a sudden I'm like, is this the right question? Like, is this the right problem we're trying to solve? Yeah.
Right.
And well, and here's one that maybe most people could relate to. So we're trying to establish some goals for next year as they relate to the Travel Alliance partnership, our partner business. And we were looking at the typical line items like how many member renewals do we need? How many new members do we want? How much event revenue should we have? How many sponsors do we need? And that's fine. That's how we always do it. But all of a sudden I said, is this the right question? Do we really want, are we really just trying to achieve a revenue number or are we trying to achieve something else? It could still be revenue related. Are we trying to achieve a profit number? Are we trying to achieve a growth, like percent growth rate, like within our community in general? And so just like stopping when you think like, okay, I'm trying to come up with my goals for next year, and I'm just looking at the goals that I set last year, and I'm saying I'm going to incrementally increase those. But stepping back and saying, are those really the right goals that I want to set? That's just one example. Like, it doesn't have to be revenue related, but that was a conversation I had recently. And I said, is this the right question that, are we answering the right question here?
So it starts with setting the right goals, and that comes from not just doing what's obvious and not just doing what you did because you did it last year, like you said,
Mhm.
and just being brave enough and having courage to challenge that. Like, hey, that might have been the right direction, but maybe it's something different now
Mhm.
because of changing
Exactly.
circumstances. Yeah.
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 Hmm.
So, we're coming almost to the end of our session together, but I would love to know, how would you like to be remembered?
Hmm. That is such a good question because I have been thinking a lot about legacy lately. And I don't know if it's because in my book and on my show I talk about cathedral thinking. which is basically the idea of the current generation being tethered to future generations, right, in the work that we're doing now. Um, and so when I think about it like that, I think, well, I would love for people to remember me as just having a positive impact in general on people, on my kids for sure. I mean, our kids, and I'm actually a grandmother now, so our grandchildren. Yeah, start to have grandchildren, and that'll really, make you think about your legacy. Um, but yeah, I think it's really just the positive impact. I hope people remember me as being, passionate and supportive and inspiring and helping to lift people up. That's really what I strive to do, is to try to help people be better. Um, and not by passing judgment on them and saying you have to be better by any means, but just to be able to provide, information about ways that you could be better, whether it's better, stronger collaborations, which is really where I'm putting all of my focus, because I believe it's that important. Or, lifting up my employees the way I've talked about, in previous questions, or helping lift up my children as they, go off and start their careers and things. So I think that's the one I landed on. Mhm.
Let's go back with some inspiration. Let's go back to your podcast and keep an eye on what you're doing. So you're definitely doing it for me. So thanks so
Awesome.
much for that. So where can everybody find you, find your book, your podcast?
Well, my podcast is on every podcast player. So, whatever podcast player you listen to, search for Destination on the left and you will find it there. You can also go to our website, breaktheicemedia.com, and the podcast is there, as well as a lot of the collaboration research, a number of white papers and things. Look in the resource section, there's a ton of information there. And I now have an author website, and
Awesome.
that is NicoleMahoney.com, where you can find my book and the link to Amazon should you want to order it and learn more about collaboration.
Fabulous. And I'm sure you would love if people connect with you on LinkedIn as well. Um,
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining me today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Until next time, I'm Rachel Vandenberg, and this is the Travel Leader Podcast.